Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you would mind hitting the like button, that really helps out my channel a great deal. I really appreciate it. I also love it if you leave a comment. I like to hear what you think. Ideas for videos, all that kind of stuff is great. I have a number of stones that are cut in sort of cuboid form, where they're sort of an elongated rectangle but three-dimensional. And it's fun to do different things with those sometimes because they're unusual and not the typical types of stones I'm setting. So I'm going to do a different kind of pendant today. I saw a ring online somewhere that had kind of a similar design, and I'm going to do the same sort of thing on the pendant, where it's got sort of a like almost a fence pattern going around it. I think I'm going to rivet it near the top so that it has a little movement from up near the bail, and we'll see how that turns out. I wanted to thank some groups of people, and I have a new patron over on Patreon. His name's Willie S. Thank you, Willie, for signing up. I appreciate it. And like all my patrons, I appreciate not only the financial support, but I appreciate the real nice community that you guys have built over there, where you can chat with each other about different ideas and strategies for things. And I've learned so much from you, and I really appreciate you. Thanks so much for that. It's a nice place to hang out and talk with you guys. So the other group of people, and we just passed 10,000 subscribers, which I didn't ever think I'd be able to say, but that's amazing. I don't know how to thank you for that. And if you haven't subscribed, I'd love to have you as a subscriber. I've gotten such nice input from my subscribers, and sometimes when I'm tired or when I don't feel like doing this, that's a real help. And I really also appreciate all the buy me a coffees and super thanks. That kind of stuff totally helps with supplies, which are getting more expensive, you know. So thank you so much for all the support. That's amazing, and I can't say how much I appreciate it. So, all right, well, let's get started on this project today. So these are a couple of the design idea books you can find in my merch store. I find them to be pretty useful these days. I didn't used to sketch things out before I made them, but anymore I've been finding that it really helps me to get an idea kind of solidified in my brain about what I want to make. So with this one, I was thinking about these kind of cuboid is what I should say. I keep trying to say ovoid, but cuboid is kind of the term for these sorts of shapes. I have a couple to choose from. I took a few kind of rectangular beads and looked at those as options as well. But since I'm going to do something that shows up against the stone, I think I want it to be have a dark background. I think this is a little bit narrow for what I was going to do. This one has a little bit more space on each side. I don't love the finish on this one. It's a little bit not as high polished as I would like, but it's a black onyx, and so I think the silver will stand out nicely against it. But I need to have a little surface area on each side so that you can put some designs. So that's why I decided against this, although I think this is a cooler stone, honestly. But I think this will make something kind of neat because we'll be kind of focused on the silver with this just as a background. This is the idea. I'm going to make a little cup for it to sit in, which is much like a bezel, but I'm going to make it out of sterling instead of the fine silver, which I usually use for the bezel strip. I have a bunch of these pieces of 14 gauge and 12 gauge square wire that I like to flatten it with my rolling mill and use it for various things, and so I have a bunch of cut off pieces of it of different sizes. I think some of them I can use for the pieces that go between the little bottom part here and where I'm going to hinge it, or not hinge it, rivet it right there to create kind of a double hinge so this thing swings. I'll use that for those, and I'll also use some various ones for these little design elements that I'm going to solder on there, like little fence slats. There's going to be a thin one that goes all the way around the stone. This one probably I will put a little bit of a dab of epoxy underneath the stone so it stays in there permanently after everything's all polished up. It doesn't really have a sure way to guarantee that it wouldn't come out of there, and it's hard to do anything like that with a rectangular stone, so unless you put caps on the end or something like that. So we'll do that at the end. I'll probably do that off camera, but we'll make the whole setting here. And from the side, I'm going to use, on the top, I'm going to use maybe some 16 gauge square if I can find a little piece of that I have left. But I think we'll start by making our little platform on the bottom here. This is 7 by 7 by 20 is what it measured as far as millimeters. Let's do this corner right here. Just like that. I'm going to leave some excess so I have some place to point the heat, really. I'm probably going to do an upcoming video where I answer some subscriber questions. So if you have any questions about the way I do things, or you know, metalsmithing techniques that I know how to, that I have enough knowledge to talk about, I'm certainly willing to do a video where I answer some questions by subscribers. So let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and I'll kind of make a list of the most frequent ones, and I'll try and answer those comments in a video coming up pretty soon. I haven't really done one like that, but I think that might not be a bad idea. Let's see if I got a long skinny area I can cut a piece of this off of. Why don't I do 3 millimeters, and we can file it down if we want to then. Just kind of scribe a line that way, and we should just cut that strip off. So I think it's probably advisable to end this piece in the middle of one of these sides when we're finding the size. And also when we solder it together, I would never put the solder joint right at the corner because it's going to look different than the other corners. This doesn't have super sharp edges. You can make slight adjustments if you need to with your pliers. That's close. That looks pretty good. I think that's close enough. So let's solder that closed. If you haven't been to my channel before, I use primarily hard silver sheet solder. And I use a liquid flux that I spray on with a spray bottle generally. Another thing people ask me about is my torch, and I use a Smith, Silversmith is the model, and it's an acetylene air torch, which I find to be really good for silver work. Just remove a little bit of excess there. Make sure the shape is relatively good. Solder that thing down. Looks like I have plenty of solder on the pad there. I'm just going to flux this and then throw 3 or 4 of those in there. Push them up against the sides. Oops. Got a little overzealous there with my spraying. When you're heating something like this to get it soldered down to a thicker piece of sheet, more mass in the bottom probably than on the sides. So getting the bottom piece is going to be a little more challenging because it's not exposed to the heat as much as this sheet that's up on top. So we got to kind of really try and pump the heat into that bottom sheet without melting the upper part. Sometimes takes a little practice. I'm just going to trim it off. I just need to do a little bit of filing to get this bottom all nice and flush. I'd like it to look like a single piece of metal rather than two pieces soldered together. There we go, that's pretty good. If I can't find what I need here, I can always use some sheet, or I could flatten a little bit more wire. That's a pretty good size for the ones going up the sides. Might need it to be a little bit narrower though. I still have to have room to do a rivet, so I can't get it too thin. I'm going to roll this just a slight bit thinner. I'll be right back. What I think I want to do is try drilling a hole in this and see if I can get it one that's big enough for a piece of 18 gauge without making it weak. Let's cut this in half right now. Put that on there because I need to have it sticking up a ways. And I think if that gives me plenty of room to work with, even if I screw up or something. Not bad. Okay. I'm doing this in advance so that if I'm successful in getting this drilled nicely, we can have that already done. So I'm looking at this, and I think that's about how far up I want it to stick. That's just kind of an arbitrary measurement. In order to get it to be a pretty precise measurement, if I put a little Sharpie on there, like a mark straight across there, I can get it pretty close. And then I'll just cut the other one to be the same length. Okay, so let's line those two holes up like that. Should be able to scratch a mark. Okay, so I want these to go up the middle of two of these sides. So I think we need to figure out what's going to be wrapping between them that we're going to solder the designs to. So I need to find some kind that I like. This one might work. It's about the right thickness and everything. Looks like another piece of 14 that's just been squished. So I think let's do it this way. Have a few little pieces of solder on there, so let's solder this together. I do a lot of pick soldering, and that's where I pick up a bit of solder. heat the piece up to the soldering temperature and then touch it where it goes, and I find that to be a super useful technique. So if you're interested, I'll put a link up there for you. I have made a video about that quite a while ago. The first thing is to pick it up like that, and you got to heat the entire piece. My tendency is to stick it in there too soon, so even though I've been doing this for a zillion years, you get impatient. But it should, when you touch it, you know, it shouldn't have to wait too long for it to just jump on there and flow. We have this in the middle of this side. I did do it kind of high. I might lower that just a tiny bit. Either way, we still got to go around this thing. I'm going to mark it long and then I'll file it off until it's just perfect after I cut it. It's easier to take away than it is to add, right? If it's like usual, I will have filed it too far now. Let's see. Yeah, that'll work. It's a little misshapen right now, but put it down on one of these magnesia blocks here so nothing can move too much. And I'll just quick solder that together. These soft surfaces are handy sometimes. The disadvantage of these things is, since with silver you have to get it up to the entire piece up to temperature to solder it well, if you bury part of it in the pad, it makes it harder to get that piece up to temperature. So you may end up with a cold solder joint if you're not careful, or melt your piece up above before you get the other piece hot enough. So, in theory, should be able to just cut that out and solder that other one in. Let's see what we can do here. I'm going to cut a little shorter piece of this. Well, I'll see if that'll work or not. I got some things propping stuff up. Hopefully well enough. Guess we'll find out, right? That looks like that'll be fine. I'm not going to shove it down there that hard because I don't want to scratch the stone. But now I need to solder this to the edges of these. I have to figure out a way to do this. My thought is to push this part way in. That looks pretty good. Let's give that a try. I can do this without moving it at all. Now, while that's still in that position, I think I can probably solder on some pieces that go along this way without too much problem. But I think they need to be different size lengths like this. And so I'm going to kind of randomly place them there. So, but I want skinnier ones than this maybe. A couple of things I did off camera. I did go ahead and pull this out of here and then file all those sides relatively flat, and I'll flux that on top. I also filed some of these ones thinner, so we have some options. And I think let's start by, I think the easiest way to attach it on here would be to sweat a little solder on these. And if you're new to this, sweat soldering is where you pre-melt some solder onto something so it's in the place where you want it to be. And what I'll do is I'll just pick a little bit in the middle, sort of in the middle of these. I'm going to try and avoid the ends because I'm going to actually perch them on here where they're touching this bottom piece, and I don't really want them to solder onto that. So if it happens, I can just cut them and file that off, but preferably not have that happen. Okay, let's flux this. Yeah, that's one. Not sure I had flow there, so I'm going to add a little bit. Oopsie. Can't have that. If it's touching it, it'll pull it right over there. Okay. Those look pretty good, and they're relatively straight up and down, which is what I was hoping for. I have to figure out how to do it without anything else falling off here. Find one of these pads that's a little more chewed up. A spot for it in here. The only thing I'm really worried about is this one right here, a little bit. So if I put something like that under it, it should be okay. put kind of a skinny one on each of these sides, if I can. It's kind of a complicated little cage sort of thing. Looks like we succeeded. Last thing I need to do is make the top part. So I need to scrounge and see if I can find some wire that I can use for those bales. So I've done a couple of things off camera just to save a little time. I took a piece of that and I filed notches and then I bent it so that it would fit kind of like that, and I put that in there to hold it in place. I also made two little squares out of 16 gauge, and so we're going to solder those on here hopefully. Look at it from all the different angles, make sure everything looks pretty straight. Intervals. My holes are misaligned a little bit. So I've made a decision. I was gonna try and make this work and just get a good picture, but I can't even sell it like this. So I'm going to cut these off, drill two new holes, and I'm going to make a split chain that connects to the top of those, and we'll just bag the hinge part. And I think that'll look all right. So that's what I'm going to do, and we'll see how that turns out. I'm just not pleased with it the way it is, so give it another try a slightly different way. So. Alright, well that was the Slat's pendant. I think that's something like that is what we're going to call it probably. If you enjoyed that, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. I really appreciate that. And also, take a moment and check out my playlist page. I've split my videos into a number of different categories so it's easier to find things, and that's an easy way to navigate the channel a little bit better. So watch a couple more videos. If you like what you see, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. The other thing is, before you leave, there's a number of important links to me in the video description down below. There's information about the video itself, including the supply list, and it has things like links to my Patreon if you want to get more involved in being a supporter and get some additional content. There's a link to my Buy Me a Coffee page if you'd like to make a contribution for some supplies for me. There's my merch page if you want to get one of those nice design idea books I showed you at the beginning, which I find so invaluable these days. And finally, there's a link to my website if you want to buy some jewelry that I've made. So check those things out. Come back and see us again. And thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Happy silversmithing.